Hi, my name is Jake Gasper. Right now, I am coding an engine for a TPS shooter. It's yet to really be known. I haven't really done any, a lot of thought train into it. I used to have a tutorial YouTube with 70,000, 80,000 views. But I've been taking my time to focus more on, making a game. But however, I did come across a gem when I was in the asset store. Um, it's been really difficult to research into finding a mechanism tutorial in general that covers IK rig system. So if you are good at just like opening a project and looking at things and then kind of deciphering and debugging things, this little asset, let's see, what was the name of the guy? Wilian Silva. Excuse me if I pronounce that wrong. It's only $10 and it comes with a pretty good setup for a system. Um, Ignore what I kind of got going on here. Just to show you how simple it is. Basically, I have my basic little Reploid looking kind of character. Uh, I made in Blender. So if you want to use something like Make Human, it does import into its little character standardized template maker and everything like that pretty well too as well. So if you use Make Human and you're just using it to do your base meshing, because Make Human doesn't come with a wide variety of options. So, basically I just went over, did a quick base mesh over a simple little character blueprint, came up with this little Reploid guy, or body piece guy, I don't know what you want to call it. I went through, rigged them. I'm not going to get into that. And it may or might not be the game design for the new game, which I kind of haven't closed at the moment. However, so as soon as you're done rigging, and you go through Blender or whatever 3D design program that you're, deciding to use, and make sure the rig is all good for just a standardized FK. I would leave out all the IK helpers. Um, The thing you're going to want to do though, if you, here's a quick note, just for, if you're going to export FPXs out of Blender into Unity, one thing to keep in mind that I did find out, for the 7.4 binary anyway, if you're going to import and you're going to import all the scaling according to the Blender size, it's going to import into Unity with the wrong import size because I think it uses like a standardized FPX size. So when you're exporting the FPX, ideally this would be the common thing for most game engines to keep the unit size scaled properly when you're porting back and forth between things. However, this little button here where you can actually scale down your object if you want beforehand, you want to uncheck that and then export, your FPX as normal. And the reason is because, for example, if I do this, let me put this somewhere a little bit better. I have a kind of a mess going on here. So we are going to go over here to game projects and my models. I'm just going to drop it actually directly into my models. I'm going to call this Reploid mess and then export it with the FBX. I'm going to leave my scale factor, but however, I'm going to leave this ticked. But again, if you're exporting out of Blender, you're going to want to leave that unticked, and I'll show you why. Um, And then I guess I can run a few more things that might help you before. And I know we're trying to kind of cover um, our fellow guy that released this asset. Sorry if I don't have the right words right now. I haven't done one of these in a long time. But we're going to do a couple things that are going to make it easier for you to do so. So if you're used to, if you 3D model, a lot of the times you're going to want your guy in an A pose. I know when I model out actual models, I prefer my guy to be in A pose because if I'm doing muscular structure and things of that nature, it's a lot harder to picture and do muscular structure in a T-pose for me because I can't really see like the deltoid, all the different muscle patterns, excuse me, like the deltoids, excuse me, biceps, triceps, and other things of that nature. Because when my arm is bent this way, for example, and I'm looking at my tricep this way, um, I don't know, a little grease pencil, but for example, if I'm over here and I got my tricep and I'm trying to blend that in with my shoulder muscles and other things of that nature, um, my traps, excuse me, on the neck muscle are going to be a lot harder to sculpt in a T pose, in my opinion. So I do most of my work in an A pose and then try to convert it back into T pose. And to do that, it can be very complicated because when you're using mechanism, also, no, this is not just for the actual little, our $10, TPS shooter that uses an IK rig system to do everything, which is very nice because if you don't have an artist at hand at the moment, or, um, a plethora of other things that make it very complicated animation. Maybe you don't have an animator, maybe you don't have an artist, uh, and anything other accordingly to that, it'll be very stressful. Um, And keep in mind, like the best thing to do, um, I've never finished a game, but I've done a lot of research the last 4 years or 3, 4, yeah, about 4, maybe almost 5. I don't know what the hell it's been. 5 years using Unity, and Blender, and according to, I've developed games for like 18 years, but uh, I've just never finished one. I just never had the time. And lately it's been more of a matter of how do I have time to, keep up with my hobby, and hopefully my hobby makes product. Uh, because ideally, um, if you don't, it's not a matter of selling out. It's more of a matter of how can I keep my hobby with me, and how can I, continue my pursue my career and not my hobby. Or maybe that might be teaching. I don't know. It's up to you. But anyways, so using IK systems are kind of a more complex system when it comes to coding. I mean, it's easier to say, logically of, using an FK system like, Unity. Well, now that we have Unity Mechanism, it takes care of some highly complicated things, because if you guys ever used a locomotion system back before there was a mechanism system, or Unreal has a system too, and these new engines have a IK rigging system and animation system that you can just kind of plop one thing to the other. Before, it got simpler with like a software where you could actually tie the bones together. You'd have to rebone with the same exact skeleton using something like Milkshape, and then bind your vertices to that exact kind of skeleton for the exact kind of animations, and so on and so forth. And before that, and then you had a locomotion system that you had to actually custom code that uses a mathematical value to move the legs, and mechanism, you just simply click an IK button, a few toggle buttons, and then you have an IK system, which is outstanding. It's insane, really. So, and there's other things like IK helpers and stuff that are more complicated, and that's why $10 for this little system is actually proving to be more of a really handy tool than it actually appears. So, my little Reploid guy, nothing much to him, just the material. I did UV map him, so I kind of like him. I might even make a game out of it because I just like how simplistic it looks. So anyways, so you export, like I told you though, if I were to export this into FBX, exporting to this Reploid mess, when I take that toggle button and leave the scale accordingly, even though everything looks fine, um, we'll get there though. So another thing is it's hard to get my object into a T-pose, and if there's another way, I'm happy and open-minded to hear how you would actually get him into a really good T-pose. But what works best for the system is to have him in a T-pose because it automatically generates a ragdoll, and for box colliders, sphere colliders, anything that you attach to a bone, you're going to want it to be in a T-pose because it's easier for the Unity's um, scaling parameters to articulate something that's not on an angle, if that makes any sense. Okay, so what we're gonna do is all you gotta do is hop over to Mixamo.com, Adobe ID. I do like Mixamo. It has changed. I've been kind of off and on with it, but I highly suggest it if you need to just run through a few prototyping, especially if that's all you're gonna do, to get the things running and make sure this is like a comfortable prototype of the game that you want to use. And oh yeah, wrong password. There we go. So what we're gonna do is wait till all this loads. It's gonna, I'm gonna wait till this is like a previous mess up. So once you get over here, I mean, you could of course just go hop over and use a character if you'd like to do so, but just to show you something kind of interesting that happens. So ideally, we're gonna hop over here. I'm gonna go back to my game project folder. I'm gonna go to my models, find my replay mess that I created with this scaling parameters button set, and everything looks fine once we go inside Mixamo. By the way, the animations will import properly. And as well with uh, oh, for that blah blah. Okay, well, something I did wrong there, and I apologize. However, you go in here, upload your character. Your character will be uploaded if you have a bone structure. If you don't, you could use Miximo's auto rigging system. I usually do in the bone rigging system myself because there are a few little minor errors that can happen. It does work almost 100% excellent though, so that it's really nice to have that. And now that they run through Adobe, it's become pretty free. Before you had a limit to everything, so I haven't used it too much. I just come in here to get a few animations and make sure my character is running. So, after that you go to the animations tab, search T-pose, select it. It should put them in a T-pose. Just to show you, we'll actually go grab us a quick character. Let's grab us Remy over here, I guess. Hopefully this will load. So, interesting. Something is really... Hmm. Well then. Perhaps something. There we go. Okay, I just had to hop back over and hop back in. So here's our guy. I forgot what character he is. L.A. Ellie or something like that. Pretty interesting character anyway. So if we were to upload our Reploid again with that Blender animation and then go to T-pose. So whatever, rig you're gonna want to just easily hop over to Mixamo, put him into T-pose, and that way he's in a perfect T-pose. And when you're doing mechanism animations and you're using other people's mechanism animations, especially bipedal animations and all these other ones, you're gonna find that things can happen where the feet might be in the wrong direction, etc., if he's not defaulted into a T-pose. And of course, you can use the rest position in Blender to do that. I've found that a few things have happened when I've used it that way, so I just simply hop over to Mechanim and do all my just reset my guy from A post to T post that way, and then download them. And then you'll download into your whatever download manager you have. Anyway, so the problem though is when you put the guy into the art piece, and I don't even need to put him in a T-pose to show you the incorrect patterns, because if you put him in a T-pose, like again, these box colliders will be all angled all sorts of crazy. Their scales might be a little awkward and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this before I reopen it because I don't want to screw up what I have here. And I'm gonna show you by grabbing our rig mess here. Let's see if it does it. If it doesn't do it, I wouldn't be surprised though. Okay, so he's way too big, as you can see from the Blender export. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. What I'm gonna do is actually go to rig as well, go to humanoid, hit apply, and then I'm gonna go ahead and hit configure. Make sure you have the scene here saved, and go ahead and save it. And just make sure that all the bones are attached. Everything should be lit up green, especially keep in mind his fingers. Can't see really the head bone, but there is a head bone, so you can see everything in the humanoid figure that it's mapped correctly. You can go over to the muscle settings, and you can check the actual skinned our mechanism rig, our IK rig system going on here, and making sure that everything's working right. You can tilt them around, blah blah blah. After you do that, though, I found out there can be an error where it actually maps into the muscle settings that you did. So you go over here at the bottom right corner in the little tab here and go to the submenu and click Enforce T-Pose again. And I know it looks like he has it, but I'm going to go ahead and apply that twice. So after that, I'm going to hop over back to our FBX mesh. I'm going to deselect Use File Scale. I just don't want anything to import improperly because that'll be the actual regular file. Um, Sometimes this is what you want, but in this case I'm trying to use a more default Unity scale. I mean, it's not going to change anything. He's even bigger. So if you look at that, it looks like a giant. Anyway. But again, I just want to use it this way. So I'm going to go to scale factor, and note if when I dragged it, it was giant. So I'm going to do a 0.025, oh, 0.0 and a quarter, hit apply. See how big he is now. Still pretty big. That's okay. We're going to do just a little bit of scaling inside Unity. I'm going to use the little scale tool, scale him down, and then I'm going to go ahead and reset his position XY0, XYZ, X, Y, and Z to 0. And he's actually, just kind of move him up here just to try to get a scale that's kind of similar. I'm not going to screw around with this too much. I don't know. You just want to make sure that when you're doing prefabs, a lot of the times you're going to want the position values to always be 0. Because if you're doing anything local or you know, you're creating something from a prefab, then you kind of want the position values to be changed by code and not the prefab itself. So uh, then we're gonna take our little Reploid guy or whatever we're calling him. I'm just gonna go ahead and drag him in the main assets folder to create a prefab. I'm going to go ahead and untick apply root motion, even though that will be unticked by the little humanoid basic thing that costs us $10 after you import it. So anyway, so now we have an avatar, the rig's set up, everything's good to go, but when we get down to it, I'm going to go ahead and delete our little guy out of the scene as well because we created prefab. We're going to go to humanoid basics for this gentleman's TPS controller system, and we're going to hit player setup. And I'm going to go over here to our Reploid mask guy. I'm going to drag it in. It says Humanoid FPX, however it wants a prefab. And I'm going to go ahead and drag him over, and I'm going to hit done. And you can see that the generated colliders are ginormous, the scale factors are all crazy, the origin is all sorts of screwed up, and this is because we used our Blender settings. So if you ever want to export anything out of Blender, at the moment anyway, you're going to want to export the FPX, you're going to want to take the scale, and you can change the scale, it's up to you, but you're going to want to make sure you untick that, and then it'll fix the whole problem. Okay. So I'm going to hop out of Blender, stop that. So when you do it properly though, however, just to kind of show you, what did I put my guy though, huh? I'm gonna go ahead and delete this guy, by the way. It's just waste space. Waste space to have the mesh in there. Um, hmm. Okay, I guess I have it inside the resources repo. Pose. No? Huh. Well then. Well, using his, because his is seamlessly perfect, we're gonna go to models, characters. Oh, here's mine, however. But we'll go ahead and use the one that came default, for example. So its name is base of the prefab. And you can see everything's just colliders right now because it actually creates a whole new player, copies over the other one. And we're gonna hit done. And you can see that in the default T-pose and in the good scaling that everything's appropriate, you know, that creates for the ragdoll. However, I might go around and change the box colliders for the arms and legs to be cylinders. Um, a little bit more realistic, you know, your arm don't rotate like a box. But I guess the targeting system he wanted, maybe for damage, was a box. I'm not sure what he's getting at. You can always change the scale of your character too as well. Um, this saying though is just to change the scale to try to match the big general character capsule controller. So you just kind of want to keep your guy inside this little capsule collider. And you can change the actual collider scale factor of each individual item if you want. You can see all the boxes got bigger, but I'm going to leave it default because that is probably where you want to go anyway. Alright, so hit play. Here's a little example. The guy can pick up a gun, all that, and shoot, do shit like that. Pretty cool. You can see though that from your guys's and mine, I have changed a few things here. Camera's a little shaky though for some reason. Not sure what's going on with that, but yeah. Huh. Interesting. I don't know why, but as I see it, I've changed a few things though. You know, before how you'd aim, you kind of have to like look and you turn, which is really cool. It's kind of innovative how you did the aiming peak system. But I had a problem with when I want to keep my aim down, I want to strafe, and I get to this corner. So when I'm here, it's just like, oh yeah, the guy's gonna shoot me before I do. And if you hit T, I don't know. I just changed mine to the mouse wheel. Um, but again, you know, it's kind of more like defaulting your keys out. So if you think about it, the game actually plays really smooth if you can switch your left to right camera. So you can think of this pretty action orientated. Because a lot of games don't really do the peak system like this. Like it's pretty well done. Like, you know, we got an automated camera system that you walk through. You know, and he's got things where, you know, there's a few things, but most games, you know, you're gonna typically see things go through the walls in a TPS. Oh, I just wish he wasn't, the camera wasn't shaking. Let's see if I can reopen my project. However, I did see a few posts about, you know, wanting the hands to be closed. I haven't really got too advanced with this. I just went over to Mixamo and grabbed a one of the rifle uh, animations. So just to show you, I went over here, made sure I used my Reploid guy. So if you're using your character, it's better to use your character. Your hands might be out of position for this. So I went over and grabbed, you can see how one hand's open, one hand is about pulled on the trigger. Um, all you gotta do is set up an animation. You gotta put the humanoid rig in there. So I created it out of this model anyway. And with animation from Mixamo, just kind of get him in a pose where it looks like he's holding. He does have to have a few frames where he moves, and I know this looks like his whole body's moving, but it doesn't matter since we're not even using the arms. All we're using is the hands, and we just want to make sure that his hands are actually um, in position to make it look more like he's actually holding different kinds of weapons. So to get real simple, once that's done, we hop over here, go to our player, go to the animator. If you don't have the animator window open, go over here to the animator window, um, click a new layer, take that layer, add something like hands, rename it, go ahead and delete, right click and delete that. So now with this new layer, if you click the little settings icon over here, it'll show you something that'll probably default you out like this. So it'll be like weight is 0 and it'll have a mask with no mask. So this layer is basically going to be our hand layer for the moment, until I get more advanced with this, because I'm still digging into it myself. But here you have another layer that goes on top of the base layer. The base layer is him climbing, him moving, him walking, running, crouching, etc. And all that's done through this pretty simple state machine, and that is called the state animator state machine mechanism. So this, we're going to want to turn the weight up to 1, because basically it's overriding the other layer of animation. And how much do you want to overwrite that other layer? So if we set it to something like 0.5, and he's moving his fingers, um, and we have animation where he has his fist closed. So if we're using the layer with his fist closed and we want to kind of override his fingers moving, and we don't want him to move around all crazy while he's shooting or something, um, but we still want to see a little bit of his fingers kind of wiggle, then we turn the weight down. So what we want to do is, here in my hands, is all you got to do is right click, create, and in our little submenu, avatar mask, and name it to something. It doesn't matter what you want it, so blah, right? And the same thing, once you create that new mask, you're gonna want to just left click, right click, whatever. Don't double click or it'll green out everything. So um, do it simply, just kind of like in between the two IKs here. Just make everything red, and then click the two hands green. Don't screw with the IK, uh, and that's it. So this mask that I want to override with the other animation, I just want to override the hands and nothing else, because if I override its body, then his body's going to go into that rifle aiming position. So just to show you, if I green out his body, it's going to screw with the rest of the animations. He's going to look lurched over all the time, which is interesting, but he looks like he's drunk or hungover or something like that. So and that's not really working out. And I have a camera that's giving me some really bad problems. So I apologize about the shaking. I'm not sure what's going on with that at the moment. This looks really shaky. I don't know, something with the system. I'm not sure what it is. It's awkward. So anyway, to do that, again, you go over here, add a new layer, add the weight, and then find your layer mask, blah, or hands, or whatever you named it. And that's all you need to do. Make sure it's an override. Add the weight to full amount of 1. And then you got to have that default animation that's overriding the rest of our other animations. And simply, again, I went to mix mode, grab that rifle, and made my own little animation using these toggle. So, here we have the pistol. My finger will stick out just to show you. With a different animation, I'm going to go ahead and drag the pistol aim. And you can see, well, maybe not. Otherwise, so you can see it's not actually overriding for some reason now. My goodness. Well, I'll have to do that later. But, I'm going to go ahead and use the rifle set. And you can see I position things just to show you. you know, because people are probably going like, oh, that don't look right. But, you know, grab the rifle. So left and right hand kind of look like you're holding a pistol a little bit more logistically. And then, of course, you do your movement system. So, like in the video he showed you, when you do want to add a new weapon, I would watch that one. Is, you know, you tick preview hands, and then you just kind of move the hand where you want to figure it. I might do a tutorial, or, well, I guess technically you would go, if you wanted to change the hands to be more like your hands, then you might want to do something like go to resources inside this, and I forgot where you put it. Models, characters, no. Oh, editor. That's right. Editor meshes because it's using these as gizmos and not as objects. So, um, you know, and then just delete these two, and then just make sure you copy the exact name over and put your own, like cut off your hand or something if you want to see exactly how your hand looks according to it. But that might not be necessary. Sometimes, you know, it just takes a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of managing to get it through if you want to do it that way. Or maybe I'll change it with user discretion. I don't know. So you can see I changed a few things in the hands of other weapons, but yeah. So, you know, from there, of course, you can see how I still have some hiccups, you know, you know, like, anyway. So yeah, I'll probably get a little bit further though, where if you want to see his finger squeeze the trigger, I'll have to go into the code and actually change the code to, it'll be a simple process, just maybe a Boolean check that'll say switch from here to fire, or the only problem I see about this way though is like I can see people wanting to do complete custom animations for reload and stuff like that using the actual body. You know, you to do that, you'd do something like in Blender, and you'd set up your own IK rig system for your newly created T pose, and then you know you would or use the your own animation system. You know, and set up your guy like this, and then this is how it's done another way, and then you know have him in his little whatever, right? Holding a and so you create your keyframes inside Blender because it's a little bit easier. Uh, you know, that way you can move his fingers around. I mean, basically where it gets is moving his fingers around. So, and then you'd mask off, you know, the whole upper body and stuff and add it in the animation tab. However, I don't really want to do it that way, and it almost misses the point of the IK system that he has set up. Things like changing the belly and uh, you, you know, like if his arms for your character were too deep, if it were dragging in his body, there's you know more than a few things you can do. So I'm just gonna click the SMG while we're hitting play. Current positioning. So you know, not only can we preview the hands, right, but we could actually have like the default position moved a little bit different. So technically you can just kind of like, you know, if you wanted it to look like that or something. So this is inside the weapon script, and it's easier to, you know, edit it when the character, in fact, is in, you know, play mode. So, you know, if you want him to carry a gun around like some weird, you know, like some old guy that can have a hard time carrying the gun, I don't know. Right? And then, you know, there you have it. Ain't that bad. So, or if you want him to say use a tough guy, you could turn off use left hand. Okay, so now that his left hand's not up, he's just using, you know, his other hand's not becoming a part of the actual weapon. Uh, then we could actually just see. You have things like default rotation for another. It's gonna move because it uses the actual weapon origin to move his IK rig system around. Um, so I could do something like this and kind of move it down, weight it to be a little more gangster here. Um, Move the X position, maybe. I don't know. So he's kind of a thug, or he's some kind of. He's holding his weapon like the penguin. I don't know. So yeah, it's a really good system. Um, maybe I'll get more in depth with this thing later because I'm starting to really like it. Just kind of took care of a lot of problem solving for me, and the aiming system's really good too. And the actual physics, you can see it's done quite a bit to get you started for 10 bucks, including the camera, and I did all the post processing effects and stuff like that, but um, which isn't that complicated. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So yeah, you can just use one hand, move it around, or of course, use your left hand for default. And it can be adjusted. It's kind of hard though. So the only problem is he's not gonna lock back in place. So if you do want to switch it without one hand, you can see we're having problems. The aiming position is gonna be a little more difficult, however, in my opinion. Um, because I might have to script something in there. Because you can see now he's using one fucking hand to aim. I'm gonna kill all you suckers because my man. Yeah, anyways. So, there he goes. He snaps back to his other hand. But however, the aiming position is gonna be the more complicated thing for me to figure out because it's gotta lock his IK into aim. So, yeah, you can have different positions. You can have a custom position. Uh, for like something different weapon. Um, it's kind of like a templating system that he got here, and his aiming rotation, it can be all adjusted. Uh, so, you can shoot a projectile if you would like to, which doesn't work. I never tried that, sorry. So I take that back, that needs to be fixed. It got really strange. But, whilst, like, sorry about all the I'm just kind of having fun here. So when you change his default position or whatever, you're gonna want to actually just right click the weapon-based script copy component and then untick play and then go over to the SMG while it's on the ground and then right click and paste component values. So, and that'll copy and paste them. Alright, so that's just kind of an introduction into whatever the hell I'm doing here. I just thought I'd help out because I can see that there's, some things that, people are having problems with. And that's one of them is, maybe set his fingers a little different. Uh, Next, I'm probably going to go ahead myself and just kind of change the animations out. I mean, I think anybody can do that. I would research Mechanim in general maybe and get a better in-depth idea of Mechanim itself, to be honest. Because like his movement and stuff, like it's a free Mechanim animation, and there's no problem with that. It's just I want to change his crouching because I don't like how his toes are tippy-toed. He's sneaking too much like a ninja for me when he has a gun, which is all good, but you know. So, uh, yeah, guys, happy programming. Hope this helps. If you're looking for something cheaper, because I'm not exactly the richest guy, Maybe that'll be the right tutorial set, looking for cheap assets and cheap, approachable things to do. And the cheapest thing you can do is always do it yourself. The more generally, that's a pretty philosophical. Uh, yeah. Well, I think that I'll teach you. But anyways, guys, my name is Jake Casper. I haven't done these forever. I don't really like to do these no more, but I got nothing to do. I live out in the middle of fucking nowhere. So, I'll see you guys around. And hopefully, yeah, it'll help you. Yep, yep.